Hello and welcome back to the Rise and Align podcast, where we talk about all things high vibrational. We are your hosts. My name is Halie.
And my name is Demi. Welcome back. Today we are talking about what it means to us to be a witch. So before we get started, I just want to say, it is like an art form. It's different for absolutely everyone. And this is just our own personal experiences. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's the same for all people who identify as a witch. And also, like, you don't need to be of any certain religion in order to consider yourself a witch. But that said, I would love to hear what it means to you.
Being a witch, I agree, it's very like personalized, and there's different paths of being a witch. Like there's pagan witches, Wiccan witches, and I personally don't identify with a specific witchy path. I kind of just explore my own, and to me, being a witch is being in tune with nature, its cycles, and your inner self. To me, tapping into your inner witch is almost like tapping into your highest self. It's using your intuition, and it is going through the world very tapped in and connected to what's going on energetically. And there's so many like nuances to it, I think, but I just think it's a way of life. And I have been told that witch means wise woman, and historically, the witches were the people that were the healers, and they were the ones that were tapped into their intuition and that could help the community grow or solve problems and help them heal. So I just think it is all about exploring your inner magic, your intuition, and working with the energies around you.
I definitely would say very similar. My answer would have been very similar. And just for the fun of it, prior to doing this episode, I asked my 7-year-old, because he knows that, I consider myself a witch. And I said, what do you think a witch is? Because I was just curious what his perspective would be, having grown up around me. And he said, well, I think a witch is a woman in her power. And he said, a witch is a smart woman who's magical.
Oh, I love him. Oh.
And I said, yeah, I completely agree with all of that. And I would have said that myself. And I think I agree with you very much, where it has so much to do with intuition and tapping into the natural cycles of the universe, and I would say nature, but I don't know if you could just call it nature, the natural cycles of life, of all that is, and definitely connecting to that inner being or to source energy. I think that what makes it so special is it is different for everyone. I don't think that being a witch, I don't know that I would consider it a religion, but I think that you can be Christian or Catholic or Lutheran or pagan or literally any religion and be a witch as well, because it is so personalized. And it doesn't mean that you do or don't believe in any certain god or gods. It just means that you are tapped into your own inner power. And I think that it has a lot to do with being intentional about energy, and quite a bit to do with the awareness of alchemy and our ability to alchemize emotions as well. I mean, emotions are energy in motion, so I want to say emotions as well as energy, but I mean that in the sense of like the physical external world. When you are tapped into your inner power, you become aware that you are able to alchemize and manipulate energy and kind of change the way that you perceive and attract the physical reality that you experience.
Yeah, that was another aspect of it that I was gonna that kind of came forward for me as well, as like it's a very intentional way of living.
Yeah.
And even from like a spirituality focus of like energy attracts like energy, of what you put focus on is what you're going to bring to life. If you're intentionally putting energy towards a specific manifestation or a belief or anything, that is what's going to come to life. So it's being in tune with that part of yourself and knowing that you carry the power and that you can create the life that you want, and no one else can have control over you.
And I think, you know, a lot of what you just said too, like that's what people consider to be spells. So some people use tools with their practice, some people don't. You know, everyone practices differently, but I think the purpose of using tools, like for example, like a lot of people use like herbs and tinctures to heal things because they take the time to learn herbology and learn about healing and understand that nature can heal us. And some people use like spell jars, and the things that they're putting into their spell jars not only have intention, but because everything is made up of energy and everything vibrates at a different frequency, it is oftentimes people are using objects or plants or what it might be that has that frequency that they want to attract. So I think it works in two different ways. Like one, it like scientifically literally is holding that vibration, and two, when you're like doing a spell or making a spell jar, you're putting that intention and of attracting that energy into your reality. And doing that, you're thinking about it and you're feeling it, and then you're going to act out of it. So you're more likely to create that, which is why, you know, when witches who believe in what they're doing are able to manifest and create, or like, you know, have the spell work.
Yeah. I would say for me, I love researching different herbs, their meanings, their properties, their healing benefits, crystals. Like, I love learning about all of that. And I do include those when I create spells or spell jars. But I also love to kind of do it intuitively as well.
Yes.
Like, I like to, you know, if I'm creating a spell to call in abundance, like I know that like basil is going to help call abundance in, and citrine, but I like to like go outside and notice like what's growing around me at that time, and like utilizing things from my own yard that kind of are speaking to me at that moment, or like things that I want to just feel inspired to include in my spell that just aligns with me at that time, and it's not necessarily that specifically known to call into abundance or whatever. But I think all that matters is the intention behind it, I think, no matter what it is you're doing. And if you're creating a spell and you don't have the one ingredient, that's not going to ruin the whole spell, in my opinion.
No.
You can substitute something else or create that spell in a way that aligns even more with you that isn't someone else's spell. So I think there's so many ways to go about it, but not letting something so little like ruin your intention behind something, or like let that take away from your intention that you're putting into something. And it's kind of the same thing about us talking about eclipses in our moon episode. Like, some people feel that they can't manifest during eclipses. Like, if you feel that way, then don't. But I don't think everyone needs to follow that. Like, if it feels good to us, then do it.
Yeah.
Because that feels in alignment.
Yeah, I feel like that just like solidifies that point so much, that being a witch is living from your intuition. Like, that is the absolute most important part. And I believe that we have our intuition to feel which direction feels right to us. So if there is something you want in life, you can literally feel your way there. You are a cybernetic mechanism, and that's how your subconscious mind works, is through feeling. So the more that you use your intuition and tap into that, the more you're going to create what feels best to you. And that's the only reason we want anything, is because it feels good to us. So it's just, yeah, there are no rules like any other art. It's not like you have to do this or that, or you do have to do spells or you don't, or you have to use crystals or you don't, or you have to believe in deities and work with them, or you have to believe in God, or, you know, there aren't rules. You make the rules. And you do that following your intuition.
So I've always been drawn towards this idea of being a witch. And, you know, I feel like a lot of people go through a phase where they kind of suppress that and kind of want to fit in, or, you know, explore being normal. I don't know. But when I finally began my journey back into rediscovering my inner witch, I almost found it to be overwhelming, because it was like, to be a witch, you're doing this, that, like all the things that you just said. And it's like, where do you start? Like, I have to know all of the goddesses and know all of the crystals and all of the herbs. And I can only do this spell on this type of moon, and like it felt overwhelming. But then, I still love researching different ways of being a witch and of the different things that are a part of the natural world. But you have to find your own way of being a witch. You really, really do. And you can take the parts of it that you love and utilize that, and maybe not do the other things that are usually associated with being a witch. It's so customizable. It's just about finding what makes you feel magical.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And that I wanted to say as well is such a part of being a witch, is finding magic in the mundane, finding magic in your everyday life, finding ways of bringing that magnetic energy into your life so that you feel powerful and you feel magical and you feel tapped into who you truly are. And there are just literally infinite ways to do that. One way I really love, because we talk a lot about sound healing and healing frequencies and affirmations, is to speak affirmations over what you're going to consume, which is very similar to praying before you eat.
Mm-hmm.
But, to bring that positive energy into what you're consuming and put those vibrations in you, whether or not you believe what I believe or not,
Mm-hmm.
right? When you're thinking about those positive things and you're feeling them, it does change the way that you act, and it does change your life. Like, that's just logic. So whatever you believe is meant for you to believe.
Mm-hmm.
There aren't rules to it, but I love doing little things like that. And I love intentionally looking for the magic in the mundane, because when you do that, it changes your perspective of, this present moment, and then the next, and then all of a sudden your perspective on life can change. And when you do that, it changes your ability to manipulate and create and attract whatever you want.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's what's so magic.
Mm-hmm.
You're just tapping back into your power, and it's the best feeling.
Mm-hmm. I feel like there's so many things that I wanted to say off of that. So I wrote here because I was like, okay, I really want to narrow down like what I think it means to be a witch. So one of the things that I wrote here, I had said finding magic in the mundane and intentions in the little moments. So when you are living from a place where you are looking for that magic in every single moment, and you're doing things to make the little things more enjoyable, you're building a life that is,
magical.
So yeah, it's magical. Like, that is truly what it is. Like, it's all around us at all times. And when you can have the awareness to look for it, it changes everything. And that is, to me, a big part of being a witch. And you had said speaking intentions into what you're consuming. Like, I love to do that with my coffee, as you're stirring in your creamer or your honey or whatever, like thinking about even just what you want to call in for that day, or give yourself an intention for the day as you stir it into your coffee and you drink that. And the same can be done for moon water. If you're making moon water, you basically put water into a vessel and let it sit out you can do it under the sun, you can do it under the full moon, a new moon. But when you're consuming that with a specific intention put into it, that is going to, energetically fill you with whatever that intention is. But speaking, into what you're consuming, it kind of sparked a whole concept for me that could be a big rabbit hole or a whole other discussion. But the way that, Christianity specifically aligns with a lot of witchy rituals is pretty significant. So praying before you eat, or speaking affirmations into your food before you eat, and like a lot of our main holidays that we celebrate today align with those of the spring equinox, or the equinoxes or the solstices. And there's so much that got intertwined. And I truly think that this way of life kind of precedes all of that, and it connects you to your roots, your ancestors.
Precedes.
Yeah, it precedes religion. Yeah. So it it connects you to like your ancestors, your roots, and it has so much history and meaning to me. Mm-hmm. And so I do feel like there has been efforts to suppress women specifically, and because they were so in their power, and they knew they didn't have to rely on anyone else to heal themselves or to, to create the life that they want. So I do think that there's been a lot of things that have been introduced to suppress our power and to almost to infiltrate the idea of being a witch as being evil. And in my heart, and like, that is the complete opposite of what it means to me to be a witch. Yeah. And I love that your son has this belief about what it really means to be a witch. And I really hope that with the coming generations that becomes more normalized and not so feared and, oppressed, and, women were burnt at the stake for being a witch, when reality, they just like were in their power and they knew how to heal themselves. They didn't have to go to the doctor to be fixed. I just think that there's this huge stigma about the word witch or to be a witch, but it is the best way to live, and it's so connected and tapped in and intuitive, and I wouldn't want it any other way.
I completely agree. I have to say too, I felt a little bit like hesitant / nervous to do this episode because there are so many negative connotations around the word witch, and ancestral trauma. Like, you can almost feel the fear in the admittance that you believe you are a witch, because when a woman is powerful, you can't control her. When a person is powerful, you cannot control them. And, there are male witches, and it doesn't matter if you're a male or female, it's just a way of life. But when a person is in their power, they cannot be controlled. And I think that so much of being a witch is because you're living by your intuition. You're not going to necessarily follow the societal norms or what other people might believe. You're only following what feels right to you. And I've also encountered people who think that, like, things like tarot, for example, they believe that people who consider themselves to be a witch worship tarot as a god or as above God. And this will be like Catholic people, for example, or Christian people will say that, like, there's only my God that I believe in that is exactly what it says in the Bible, and anybody who believes or uses a different word even is wrong. And it's ironic to me because I think that religious scripture says thou shalt not judge others, and that we are all the children of God, and that God and Jesus will forgive us for our sins. And Source energy has this understanding that we must be balanced, and that we do not know what we do not know, and that we only act in what we believe to be right from what we know in that moment, And so it's so much deeper than that, and it's not like being a witch is going against any other religion. Some people may practice things that are against other religions, but you cannot say that because a person identifies as a witch that they are evil or that they are wrong or anything like that. And it's crazy to me the way that we have had wars over religion.
Yeah. And honestly, religion is kind of the reason that, basically we just said is the reason for a lot of this hatred and this oppression and taking away power from others. It's really, if we want to talk about evil.
Yeah. It's fascinating too, because a lot of times when humans are trying to control other people, they can't. It actually is coming from a place of lack of power, of powerlessness. But when you are in control of your own mind and your own emotions, you become incredibly powerful and magnetic. And I think that there's this kind of universal law that almost makes it's like much harder to control external than internal. So it can't really be used for evil, Like if you are in those low vibrations, that's what you attract into your life,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what you're acting out of. And you see it happen to people. Like, you know, I hate to go to this dark place, but just to kind of show that it can be one way or the other. If a person, say, wants to hurt other people, they often attract that into their own reality. They end up getting hurt. If they steal from others, they end up getting stolen from. You know, but if they are intentionally helping others, uplifting others, being charitable, being loving, kind, empathetic, that's often what they receive back. And it's not necessarily immediately. It's not necessarily from the same person that they're doing this onto, but it does come back. What you give out does come back, always.
Mm-hmm. I think that is like a moral code for being a witch too. Like you it's karma, and what comes around goes around. And you know, again, it's manipulating energy, using energy, and we understand the workings of that. So
yeah, it's such an awareness of your own power and ability to alchemize, you know, whereas I think that some people look at that and they're like, well, you're trying to manipulate, and they see manipulation as a negative terminology rather than a intentional and attraction rather than a pushing onto or a forcefulness. It's not that way. It can't be. It can't be.
Yeah. And so, I mean, manipulation can mean different things depending on the intention behind it. I always find it interesting that a lot of people who end up identifying as a witch or exploring, you know, this path have had like glimpses or experiences as kids that align with being a witch. Yeah. I know for myself, I may have talked about this before briefly, but we've had like these rain barrels at my grandparents' house. So when it would rain, it would catch the water and then they would use that to water the garden. But I used to use those, I had a couple neighbor kids that would come over and I used to use those as my cauldron. So we would go pick like berries and twigs and rocks and we'd put them in the barrels and we would mix them around and I'd call it like my stew or my, my potion, whatever. And, I remember always being obsessed with rocks and picking rocks and we would go to a store and they had like those like kind of like crystal stations with all the little tumbles and like the little velvet bag and you would like pick your tumbles. Like I loved that. I loved it. And I just wish I never, lost sight of that part of myself. But I do know, like, obviously I'm reconnected with my inner witch, but I feel like society, you get lost or like distracted and it's so easy to forget about your true nature.
Yeah. I think it's forgetting, it's not believing in magic. Just like children believe in Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny and things like that. But the thing is, like, what you believe becomes. So if you believe in magic, then magic becomes. But if you don't, then your life won't be magical. It can't be, So, and it's interesting because as adults, we stop using our imagination so much, but they say that our imagination is the creator. And in order for anything to exist in physical reality, it must have existed in the mind of someone's imagination prior to its existence. And so we look at kids playing and using their imagination and pretending that they're doing magic. And we think, oh, that's so silly as adults. And, be serious and be, stuck in this very logical, physical life. And in doing that, you're actually blocking the magic from coming into your life. If you believe your life is magic, it becomes magical. I'm speaking from experience.
Yes. And I do feel like our generations, the coming generations are going to tap into that more. And I feel like, for me growing up, Harry Potter was huge. And so I know that so many of my peers and, people around my age grew up with that too. Restores faith for me because I know that those people believe in magic. They love, like, Harry Potter kind of restored this idea of magic, I feel like, to people. And I love that. And I just hope that, people remember that and allow that to like ignite their inner magic. Never let them to totally let that light like dim out, to always remember that there's the magic within.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's kind of funny to me because people will be like, I don't believe in magic. Like, that's ridiculous. And like, maybe there aren't flying cars or witches flying around on brooms. Maybe. I believe anything's possible. It could happen. You never know. I don't want to block that from being able to happen in my reality, but maybe those things aren't real. But the very fact that we exist in this infinite universe, in this perfect place on this spinning rock that keeps us alive, is magic. You cannot tell me that you don't believe in magic, because this whole thing is a magic trick. Like, it's incredible. It's profound, and it's so much bigger than we often realize, and we really forget when you zoom out. Like, it is ineffable, our existence here.
And that's why I think it's so important to find presence and awareness, because when you are present and you start noticing the things around you, you can find the perfection and the magic in literally everything. Looking at a flower, how it's so perfectly like geometrically like it's actually perfect.
Yeah.
And the flower after flower after flower will bloom perfectly. And like snowflakes, like they are sacred geometry. And every
Infinite
single one is different. Like it's so magical, and you can find that little spark of magic in everything if you look for it. If you have awareness of it, if you acknowledge it, be grateful for it, like you will find it literally anywhere.
I mean, there's so many different things I could say off that. Like, I think of too, like, yes, look at flowers and little tiny things that happen, and even just coincidences. Like, oh, I was just talking about that, or I just thought of you and you called, and like these little things. It's just, they are magical, but also like we create life. Like, that's pretty cool. That's pretty magical. Like. It's amazing, really. Like, there are so many different things. I have been seeing all these videos lately on how plants and trees especially are, I forget the word, something beings. It means that they are aware beings, sentient. They're sentient beings. They can actually see like the color of our shirt, and I actually saw something saying that they can do math, they can count. Like, there are all these incredible things that like
they can speak to one another.
Yeah, they communicate between each other. They warn each other of danger. Like, there are so many different things that plants and trees specifically are capable of doing that we're just learning of. That, to me, like, that's not magic. Like, that's magic. That's magic to me, for sure.
Magic, yes. I love trees so much. Oh my gosh. I see these massive trees, and I'm like, oh my gosh, the history that they hold is like insane. Like, I wish I was a tree, man.
Right? They live much longer than us. It's fascinating because if they're sentient beings, right, they must be in a state of like meditation, because they're not moving. I mean, they flow a bit, but they don't move in the physical reality in the way that we do. And we don't know the level of like thought that they are capable of possessing, but they witness, and they live for hundreds of years at a time. So it's just like, if trees could talk, they could be much wiser, much more present. They could be like gurus.
Yes. And people do like energetically connect with trees. Like you can talk to trees, but by talk to trees, I mean just like connect with their energy. And, I think that's another major part of being a witch, is being in tune with nature, loving nature, spending time in nature, and same for animals. I have never met a witch who didn't love animals, but I just think that, all of these things are teachers, and we know that we can learn so much from nature. We can learn so much from trees, and being able to connect with that is so important. And, just like you said, trees, they are grounded. They are almost in a meditative state, and they're witnessing. They're not forcing anything, or they're not pushing their way through life. They're just being. They're being, and we can learn from that. And I think that is just such a major way for me to experience life and what it means to me to be a witch, like being very in tune with the life around you.
Yes. I had written something because I was like kind of looking for the right word. And I was thinking this was part of when I was thinking, like, what does it mean to be a witch, right? And I wrote utilizing and synchronizing with. And then in quotations, I said, worshiping is not quite the word. And appreciation is close, but also not quite. It's like when you say namaste, you're recognizing the power within you and me and the goodness within you and me. And that is the relationship between the physical universe and nature and a witch.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the relationship.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's like you're holding nature in a sacred place. It's like the way that they worship cows in India, I want to say.
Yeah, Hinduism.
It's like that kind of relationship where you like appreciate and recognize the power within nature, and you synchronize with that and use that as a way to manipulate energy, and in a positive way. Like you were just talking about trees, you know, like they can teach us presence, they can teach us being, and they can teach us flowing with nature, and they can teach us grounding. And it's that recognition of the power within nature, and that is also
and
within you,
because you are
nature.
Yes, nature is you. It's in you. It's
Also, on a totally different topic, but I think that this is kind of magic too, and this happens all the time. Obviously, you and your friends are going to be on a similar vibration, right? You cannot attract somebody into your reality unless they are at a similar frequency as you, right? So oftentimes, like, you and your friends like similar things, but oftentimes you and your friends dress really similarly. And this happens to me all the time with my friends. And you've seen this, I'm sure, if you've watched our podcast episodes before. We do not talk about what we're going to wear ever. Nope. We've never had a single conversation about it. We both show up in light colored frilly blouse tops and pigtails. So that is the vibe today. It's funny how that happens. And also, like, there's so much psychology. You know, we did a color episode. So if you're interested in color psychology, make sure you go check that out as a way to bring more magic into your life intentionally. There is so much psychology behind it. And I think that this part of me wanted to present the concept of being a witch as this very positive love light thing, because that's how I see it. And I think that white and light colors bring that really light energy into reality. And then if you have TikTok, surely you have seen the like hair psychology concept where people will perceive you differently based on how you wear your hair. And if you do it on yourself and you kind of look at yourself like, oh, I had a ponytail this day, or I had bangs that day, or what it did whatever with your hair different days, you do see yourself differently. Like, I definitely feel different every day, and that's why I try to do my hair different every day, because I'm like a different version of me today. And I feel like pigtails are a more like innocent energy. And I think that identifying as a witch has a lot to do with allowing your inner child to play and to have fun and to recognize and believe in magic.
I love everything you just said, first of all. That has kind of made me think of this concept of, you know, something else that I consider, you know, being a witch, or that kind of happens as you take this journey to identifying as a witch or to tapping into your inner witch, is that I think a major part of it is to allow yourself to be connected with who you truly are. You are so connected. Your throat chakra is open. You can express yourself freely and openly. And even if it is scary, or we've historically been killed for being witches, you know, despite that fear that may be in your ancestry, you're still showing up as your most authentic self. You're tapping into your power. You're not letting the fear control you. You are just being you. And I think that's such a major part of being a witch.
Yeah, absolutely. The authenticity that is what brings you into your power.
Mm-hmm.
That really is.
And that's how you connect to your inner magic, is like being you. That is your magic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, most definitely. I was just thinking too, so I was talking a bit about tarot earlier and how some people, they view tarot as evil because they think that people who use it are worshiping it as a higher being or a source, right? And I believe in God, and sometimes I call God source energy. And, sometimes I use different words. And I think that all religion and all of these concepts are all depicting the same concept, which I think is too big for us to describe in human terms, which is why there are different religious scriptures and why they are often metaphorical rather than literal.
Mm-hmm.
And that said, the way that I see tarot, and I think we did talk about this in our tarot episode, is messages from God or messages from source energy, and just a way of connecting to the energy of the moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to messages that we might need to be thinking about or asking ourselves in order to expand in a positive way. So that said, of course, we're going to pull a tarot card this episode.
Yes. Before we finish, I think it would be fun to talk about like different maybe activities, if we want to call them, or rituals that we utilize as witches, or that you can utilize. Because I don't practice everything that is associated with being a witch, but I know you had mentioned earlier, like making tinctures and using herbs. Like herbal magic is a really great way to explore witchcraft, especially if you are really connected to nature and the forest, and growing your own food. And I think that's a good path. And obviously tarot is another really great way to explore your witchy journey, and it does provide messages from source, or you can think of it as receiving messages from your higher self, your inner witch. So I do really love that concept as well. For me, I kind of consider myself like a crystal witch. Like I love crystals and I use them regularly. I usually have them around me at all times, depending on the intention that I want to call in. And I have said before, like I do have a crystal shop. I sell crystals, and my like slogan is, connecting you to your inner magic. Like that is, to me, one of my purposes here, is like to help other people know what it feels like to connect to their inner magic, or to help them explore that path. But I love using crystals in my little spells. I love having them in my car. If I am doing something, that I'm kind of nervous about, you can use it to kind of allow you to call in a different energy, get rid of anxiety or depression, insomnia, things like that. It helps transmute some of that more negative energy into something lighter. So I'm just curious if there's any other like things that you would like to add.
I would like to say, number one, I agree. I always have crystals all over the place too, and I do find them so useful and comforting in so many different ways. Also, like I said, speaking affirmations over your water, making spell jars, things like that. When I say follow your intuition, I mean that with absolutely every aspect. So there are no rule books as to when or how often or what you should do. I do different things all the time. A lot of times I will align my practices with like a full moon or a new moon or something like that, depending on what's going on astrologically. Check out our astrology episode. Or the moon episode, or both. But I love taking baths, on a full moon, doing cleansing things, sometimes going out, skinny dipping in the lake and just soul cleansing things, grounding, barefoot walking in the forest, and writing down things I want to release and burning them, because, not only is that like a witchy thing, but it's also a really wonderful way to show your subconscious physically that you are disintegrating these concepts. And that can be really, really powerful for anybody, whether you identify as a witch or not. There are endless practices. a lot of times I just go along with what I'm feeling that day, or like the energy of what's going on in the world outside of me, and do practices based on that. So it, you know, it might be something different every time. I've done all kinds of different ones. Sometimes you find good ones on TikTok, or in books or wherever, right? But just always doing what feels magical, you know, every day. And I think keeping a practice that keeps you in touch with your true self and your inner being is really important. Like for me, it's meditation and yoga and journaling all the time. I do it all the time just to stay really in tuned.
Yeah. That is one thing that I've kind of noticed for me as well, as my spiritual journey and my journey of being a witch is they're kind of intertwined.
Yeah, they do intertwine. You know, they are similar.
Talked about fire. And another thing to me that comes along with being a witch is like working with the 4 elements and finding balance amongst the 4 elements. And again, we do go into this a lot in our astrology episode of finding balance, because all of the astrological signs are based off of the 4 elements. And I think that intertwines with being a witch as well, because that is what this earth is made up of. That is what our body is made up of. You know, can be metaphoric too, but I think it's such a great way to find balance, is like connecting to the 4 elements and what you need more of that day, or, you know, where you might need balance. So there's different rituals that you can do one way or the other. And a lot of my journey is being astrologically aligned with what's going on, and, you know, being tapped into the moon cycles. And that has allowed me to really work with these elements so intimately, in a way, is like, and really knowing where I need that balance in my life. And, you know, it can be being a witch can be very practical as well, because it will begin to correlate into your life as well, like your practices and your rituals, and, you know, everything that you're doing, you're exploring the inner magic, like it will show up for you in your life as well, which I think is the magic of being a witch.
Yes. Synchronicity is one way to know that you are just so divinely aligned, and it is really magical when you are tapped in. It just gets better and better, and like you see it, and like you and I have walked in the woods so many times, and we're like just so happy to be in the woods, admiring, you know, nature's beauty and abundance, and we'll be complimenting the moss, you know, and like, oh, this is beautiful moss, and like, oh, I love that rock, and then all of a sudden, like, something shows up. Like, I was walking in the woods, I think it was yesterday, and I'm like, oh, I'm so happy I'm at my favorite place. Can't wait. And so we're like walking up the trail, and I'm like, oh my God, a baby toad. It was so cute. And it hopped right in my hand. And I'm like, that's so cool. And then we keep going, and there's like beautiful wildflowers everywhere. And then there's berries everywhere, and we're picking berries, and like there's butterflies, and one comes and lands on you. And like, it just keeps getting better and better. Like one day we were looking at some moss, and you're like, oh my God, there's an agate just sitting on the top of the moss. like magical things will start to happen when you make an intentional effort to focus on what is magical about the moment.
It's so true. It's so true. I love it. So I've seen these, they're like collages almost, and it's like, you know, what it looks like to be like a forest witch and a sea witch. And like, have you seen those before?
Yeah.
Do you think that you could like describe the type of witch you are, or like what you're most like called towards?
For me, I like don't love those collages, because I'm like, I'm all of those witches. I'm all of them, and it just depends on the day or the season. Okay. I think that, you know, personally, I don't know if it's like my sun sign is a Taurus, it's an earth sign, you know, I feel really connected to the forest and to making tinctures and stuff like that feels resonant to me. I feel like I love crystals, and I love burning stuff and dancing around fires, and I love water, and I love it all. And so like those things are kind of silly to me, because I'm like, I think being a witch is really embodying all of it and connecting to all that is.
Yeah. That's kind of what I was wanting to hear from you, like what your version of one of those things would be. But for me, I would say I am like a cosmic witch, probably, because I do love all of the astrology and the moon aspect of it all. You know, even when I'm doing yoga, it's always very aligned with the moon. Everything that I do, I feel like, is so aligned with the moon. So that's so major for me. But then I do love the forest too. So I feel very connected to the trees and nature and moss, and green is my favorite color right now. So it's like I'm a cosmic forest witch.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. That's funny because green has recently been my favorite color too. I've been buying it all the time. I don't know what's going on, but
I
I'm like,
painted
I
my
love
whole house
green.
Like in my green kitchen, I have a green
Yeah, yeah.
washer and dryer. Like I can't stop.
Well, it's love and abundance. What's not to love?
I know. And my grandma, she used to love the color green, and I'd be like, "Ew, green is the worst color." I am her now.
It's funny how that happens.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I thought of while you were talking too is when you are doing things intuitively, they will align with everything in your life. Like, and that seems like a big statement, and it might seem like crazy, or it might literally seem like magic, but it does happen. Like, I think so many times when like I wear something, it'll align, with the day, with the energy of the day, with whatever's going on. Or I will randomly decide that I want to go on an adventure somewhere, and I'll run into somebody, and like everything is just so synchronistic when you are doing things intuitively and in alignment that, you might end up doing a yoga practice with the energy of water, and the moon will be in Pisces, and like it just you didn't even plan it out. It just happens because you are in tune.
Yes, it's living in tune. I mean, you just become in tune is what it is. Like you surrender to the forces that be.
Yeah.
I had just a couple more things that I had wrote down of like what it means to me to be a witch, and a lot of it I touched on, but I wrote down a witch is wild. Healers, and I said that as a witch you trust yourself, you're willing to heal, and you're open to mysticism, which I think is really important, because if you're going to fully embody this journey of being a witch, it does take a lot of healing and shadow work as well, and not being necessarily afraid of your inner darkness, because we do all have light and dark in us. So being able to explore that and transmute it and alchemize it. And, I even wrote like connect to your ancestors and healing generational trauma. Like that is also part of being a witch. So I just wanted to add that as we finish up here.
I think that too aligns so much with like the fact that nature is balance of that, it's yin and yang, and that is so important to have that balance within us, and to unconditionally accept all of it and be open to the expansion no matter what that is. Yeah.
Yes.
Love that. All right, shall we?
All right, we're going to pull our card for the day. So we are going to channel source energy and give you your message for today.
Okay. So there are two. 4 of Pentacles and the Hermit. The Hermit looks like a wizard. Okay, so 4 of Pentacles. I'll show you this version. Okay, so Pentacles is Earth. The figure of the 4 Pentacles is quite obviously holding on to what he has. He has worked hard for his money and his achievements, and he is reluctant to let it go. This person can be seen a miserly or mean, being possessive about what he owns. However, it can be that he is finally feeling a sense of stability or wanting to save for the future. It is the card of banking what you have and not wanting to let it go. We pulled this reversed, and it says, when reversed, the 4 of Pentacles can indicate that someone is being unkind or miserly in your life. Maybe you. Whatever the situation, a healthy, resilient attitude is bordering on stinginess at this time. Think about ways to be more flexible and open. Remember, sometimes we need to spend money to make money. And then upright, it would mean the 4 of Pentacles in a reading indicates some form of stubbornness, usually for good. You may need to take control of a situation and plan more conservatively. You may be putting your money away and investing wisely for your future. It's okay if you need to be a little more selfish with your time and emotions. You may need time to heal. I think that it takes balance of those two concepts, you know, to be truly happy. And I think that when we're holding on to things, we're not living in the present moment, and we're not allowing. And oftentimes that can block our blessings. Like I've heard so many talks about money that when you're holding on to money, like you're not allowing it to flow. And so you cannot attract more. You're stopping the flow. And it's not just with money, it's with relationships and really anything in life. If you're holding on to it, it's going to want to get away from you. And if you just let go and allow it, then you attract it. And that is so much to do with being a witch as well. So the Hermit.
I don't know if you guys can see this, but I'll show you. We're using the Steampunk Tarot for the cards. And this is our wizard for the Hermit. That's what he looks like. He's so cool.
Okay. And then I'll show you, I'm reading out of this tarot card book. The Hermit shows a figure alone in a long robe holding a staff and a lantern. This figure is a wise old sage who spends his days alone, searching for answers with a sense of introspection and self-reflection. That is me. He stands for calm, guidance, and inner peace. When called on, the Hermit is the wise guide who will give you the help that you need. And we did pull him upright. And the meaning there is when the Hermit is pulled in a reading, he shows a need for some quiet time, often alone, to reflect and look for answers within. You may need some inner healing or to just find a way to balance your life. Ooh, balance again. It is time to take a deep look at your current life, career, or love life to discover whether you feel truly fulfilled. It is a process worth taking your time over and sometimes wise to consult an expert. Reversed would be, although taking time for yourself can be hugely beneficial and healing, be careful not to isolate yourself. You may be spending too much time alone, and this can be detrimental to your mental health. The company of others could be the tonic you need right now to get out of a funk. And I feel like both of those things are just so reiterating like the balance that you need to have within life to like keep that harmony.
Yeah. I do feel like as well, like the journey of tapping into your inner witch, it can be kind of isolating because one, it's scary to, put yourself out there in that way. And, you might think that it's difficult to find other people out there like that. So you isolate yourself, but there are other people out there like you. There are other people out there who enjoys these things and who are magical and wonderful. And, don't let that stop you from finding friends and
and also like, not only as a witch, but just a human in general, like more than one person working together to manifest something is incredibly powerful. So I think it's important to, be social and to attract that community and be open to attracting that community. If maybe, you're having some changes in your life and you might not be resonating with the same people anymore, be open to attracting that because there are people who will resonate with you, and it is so empowering to have those people by your side. And you can accomplish so much more with a support system like that, and also being that for other people, and also balancing that with boundaries and like taking that time for yourself to align within, because all of the answers are within.
Yes, that's it. That's going to end the episode.
Yeah.
Boom.
I'll see you next episode. We love you guys.
Yes.
Thank you so much for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, give us a review if you'd like to spread the vibration. And as always, thank you for helping us raise the frequency.
Love you.